Disappearance stories are some of the most unsettling in true crime. They begin with something so ordinary, so everyday, that it seems impossible for it to turn into tragedy. A person goes to work, leaves at the end of their shift, and is expected to return home. But what happens when they never make it back? That is where the mystery begins. One such case left an entire community shaken because a woman finished her day at work, stepped out of the building, and then simply vanished. No one who knew her could have predicted what would follow. And the truth behind her disappearance shocked everyone who heard it. The woman at the center of this story was well-liked, responsible, and dependable. She had friends who admired her, colleagues who respected her, and family who adored her. She followed a routine life. Each day she went to work, did her job, and returned home. She was not someone who lived recklessly. She was not someone who went looking for danger. That is what makes the case so chilling. Because if it could happen to her, it could happen to anyone. On the day she disappeared, everything seemed normal. She clocked in for her shift, completed her tasks, and exchanged casual goodbyes with her coworkers. There was nothing unusual about her mood or her behavior. She was not upset, she was not anxious, and she gave no sign that anything was wrong. As she stepped out of the building, she looked like a woman heading into the evening with plans for rest or perhaps to meet friends. But that moment, so ordinary, would be the last time most people ever saw her alive. When she did not arrive home, her family grew worried quickly. This was not like her. She always called if she was running late. She always checked in. Within hours, concern turned into panic. They began making calls, checking with friends, and retracing her steps. But no one had seen her. It was as though she had vanished into thin air. The police were notified, but at first, the case was not treated with urgency. Adults sometimes choose to disappear, officers explained. Maybe she needed space. Maybe she had decided to take a break. But her family knew better. They insisted that something was terribly wrong. Days turned into weeks, and the mystery deepened. Posters went up across town with her picture. Searches were organized by volunteers. Police combed through security footage, phone records, and witness statements. Still, no answers came. Every lead turned into a dead end. The community began to fear the worst. Rumors spread. Had she been abducted? Was there a stalker? Could she have crossed paths with someone dangerous on her way home? Each theory brought new questions, but none brought the truth. The case gripped the public. Media coverage amplified the sense of dread. This was not just a missing person story. It was a nightmare that could touch anyone. People saw themselves in her routine. Everyone had walked out of work at the end of a shift. Everyone had expected to make it home safely. Her disappearance broke that sense of security, leaving people to wonder how fragile everyday safety really is. Months passed before the breakthrough came. A farmer outside of town reported finding something unusual near the edge of his property. At first, he thought it was just discarded clothing. But when police investigated, they made a devastating discovery. Human remains were found partially buried in the earth. Forensic teams were called in, and within days, the remains were confirmed to be hers. The missing woman was no longer missing. The worst fears of her family had come true. The discovery shifted the case from a search into a homicide investigation. Detectives pored over the evidence. The burial site was shallow, hastily covered, suggesting someone had been in a rush. Tire tracks nearby pointed to a vehicle, and fibers on the remains hinted at a struggle. Slowly, a picture began to form of what had happened that night. She had not chosen to disappear. She had been taken. The investigation eventually led to a suspect. A man with a history of violence and a disturbing interest in women who resembled her. He lived not far from her workplace and was known for watching women leave their jobs. Witnesses recalled seeing his car in the area the night she vanished. When police searched his home, they found chilling evidence items that belonged to her, hidden away like trophies. The evidence was enough to secure an arrest. During interrogation, the suspect showed little remorse. He denied responsibility at first, but as the evidence mounted, his story crumbled. Detectives revealed they had matched his vehicle to the tire tracks at the burial site. They matched fibers from his car to those found on her remains. Cornered by proof, he finally confessed. He admitted that he had followed her after she left work, forced her into his car, and driven her to a remote area where he ended her life. His motive was as senseless as it was cruel. He wanted control, and he saw her as an easy target. The courtroom became the stage for the final chapter of the case. Her family sat through every day of testimony, forced to hear the horrific details of how their loved one spent her final hours. The prosecutor laid out the evidence step by step, painting a picture of a predator who had hunted for his victim and a woman whose only mistake was leaving work at the wrong time. The defense tried to argue mental instability, but the brutality of the crime left the jury with little doubt. The verdict was guilty. The sentence was life in prison without the possibility of parole. For the family, it was a moment of justice, but not of healing. Nothing could bring her back. Nothing could undo the pain of knowing how she had suffered. Yet, at least, the monster responsible would never walk free again. The impact of her disappearance and murder rippled beyond her family. The community changed. Workplaces began offering escorts for employees leaving late at night. Public campaigns urged women to remain alert and to never walk alone. The case became a cautionary tale, a tragic example of how quickly routine can turn into nightmare. Her story also became a point of study for criminologists, who highlighted the dangers of opportunity-driven predators. The suspect had not targeted her specifically at first. He had targeted anyone who was vulnerable at the right time. That randomness is what made the crime so terrifying. It could have been anyone. That fact left people unsettled long after the trial ended. The family never stopped speaking her name. They worked to ensure she was remembered not only as a victim, but as a person who had lived a full life before it was stolen from her. Friends described her as kind, dependable, and full of dreams for the future. She loved her job, loved spending time with family and had plans she would never fulfill. In remembering her as she truly was, they fought against allowing her identity to be defined only by the man who destroyed her. Even today, years later, the story of her disappearance continues to haunt people. It reminds us that evil often hides in plain sight, that predators can blend into the background of our communities, and that safety is never guaranteed. Her case stands as one of those chilling reminders that reality is more frightening than fiction. Think about this. How many times have you left work and assumed you would make it home without trouble? How many times have you ignored that uneasy feeling when someone lingered nearby? This story forces us to confront those moments and to understand that awareness can mean survival. It is a painful lesson, but one that her tragedy carved into the memory of everyone who followed the case. In the end, she was a woman who simply left work and expected to return home. She did nothing wrong. She lived her life, followed her routine, and trusted that the world outside her workplace was safe. But fate placed her in the path of a predator, and the cost was everything. The truth of what happened next is as shocking as it is heartbreaking. This case is more than a story. It is a warning. It is a reminder that behind every missing person headline is a family, a community, and a reality no one should ever have to face. She left work and vanished, but her memory lives on, urging us all to be vigilant, to care for each other, and to never forget that the monsters we fear do not come from movies. They walk among us.